Alone Australia episode 6 recap. I'm going to start with Gina again, just because she was talking about saw sedge or swordgrass, and I'm actually standing right next to one here. So I'm in Port Stephens, which is north of Newcastle, but this saw sedge plant is very common. It was down there, it's up here. It pretty much has the same physical expression everywhere you see it, really. And it has this really sharp blades that can cut you, but if you pull them out, it takes a lot of effort to pull it out, but the shoots you can eat. So I'm going to just pull one out. I was going to bring gloves for this, but I forgot. So that there is the white shoot at the base. And basically all you can really eat is like about a finger width there, and then it gets really tough and stringy from here. So that white bit there is about the only bit that you can get out of it that's useful to eat. I did trial cutting off about that much and boiling that bit as well, but it didn't work. So you can get some useful nutrition out of that, but it just takes a lot of pulling, and I just eat it fresh. It tastes a little bit like peas, but it doesn't have an unpleasant taste, but it's not the best, but whatever. Yeah, Gina took a salt block, so we had to commit to all of our 10 items before we even knew which state it was in. It is there's a lot of merit to taking a salt block, because it is hard to replenish your salt stores out in the bush. The best way to get it, if you don't have like seawater around, for example, is to get it from meat. But if you're not getting meat, like we're all struggling to get meat, it is hard to replenish that. So it's a good thing having salt there. And her reaction to that salt is, I've certainly noticed as well, that when you haven't been eating and then you introduce even a familiar food, it does take a day or so before your body starts to tolerate it again. So you just kind of got to go small dose and then ramp up the dose slightly as well. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, and there's certainly plenty of dry reaching going on out there. And not much spewing going on, because there's nothing in our stomachs to spew up. Cool. Chris, so yeah, I've learned more about PTSD from watching Chris than I did in a whole career in the military. So I think it's because it's so easy to understand it, because he's able to talk us through it as it happens and give us a real running commentary. And rather than him just talking about it, we can see his physical reactions and stuff. So it's moving stuff. It has me tearing up when I watch it. But without that situation of being someone in a situation like this, where they're filming themselves all the time and can actually capture an event and see the trigger and see the whole process from go to woe and his analysis afterwards, I think that's completely unique. I mean, I don't work in the PTSD space, but I don't know if anyone else has captured anything like that. And the Army, Navy and Air Force and any agency that has people that have to deal with PTSD really should use Chris as a case study. Yeah, it's really amazing. And I mean, of course, I've heard about PTSD, and there's a song by Red Gum called "I Was Only 19." It's a famous Vietnam song, I assume written by Vietnam vets when they got back. There's a line in there about how the sound of the Channel 7 chopper chills him to his feet. So PTSD is obviously it's been a thing throughout evolution, but we're only sort of now getting a handle on it. And these modern wars and modern stress situations we put ourselves in are probably more than the kind of stress situation, the prolonged stress, anxiety situation that we used to get when we lived out in the bush, normally foraging anyway, I'd say. It's modern life that has the really horrible stresses. I mean, yes, the horrible things happen in foraging life. You get attacked by a lion or something, but it's short duration. So anyway, it's really good to see. I'm so glad I'm learning about it. So thanks, Chris, so much for opening up about that stuff. He got another trout, looked like a brownie to me. We can start to see, or I'm starting to see now, the variations in sights, and Chris has now got 3 fish in about 12 days, so he's getting about one every 4 days. And Kate's getting eels, 2 eels. So there is a lot of sight variability. So from day 2 I had lines out, and that whole time, you've seen me on the show so far, I've probably had on average 5 lines in the water, and I've been experimenting with different depths, how far out from the bank, different slope angles of the bank, different aspects of the bank, east, north, west, you know, different times of day obviously, but you know, whenever I can I'm fishing. Whenever I've got those indicators so I can monitor my fishing sites from where I'm working on the kayak. So anyway, I was working my butt off. You don't see it, but so far nothing for me at all on the fishing front. So I think that's basically site variability. That's my conclusion. Kate, possums, yeah, cool that she filmed those possums in her site. They're wild, well, all possums are wild really. I don't think we have tame brush-tailed possums in Australia, those were brush-tails. But when you go camping a lot in Australia, you'll have possums come down and, you know, scavenge food, and they almost look tame. They're not domesticated, but they're very familiar with people. But the possums there are not used to people at all because people aren't in those areas, so they're much more cagey. Michael. You can see a lot happening in the background of Michael's shots. In fact, all of us, you can see in the background, there's a fair bit of development that's happened in stuff that the show can't cover everything. And yeah, I saw stuff, you know, like Kate's developed her camp in the background. Gina obviously had as well, right? So we're skipping ahead further in time here. So it's good to see things progressing on the timeline. His trap, making a possum trap. It looks like he's doing a swing door possum trap, actually quite similar to the same kind of style, I'm guessing, to the one that I made in my second prep video before I went out there. His will be rigid in one spot, I'm guessing. I don't know, it's the first time I've seen it. First time I've realised that he's making a possum trap. Although I did see one little clip of some kind of trap in the promos about a month ago or something. So I'm looking forward to seeing how his trap turns out. All right, my stuff. So the kayak, yeah, so I saw on Facebook last night, someone was doing some comments and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, Mike's kayak's better than the one in season 2, LOL." And I was like, I thought I'd watched all the Alone series, but I must have missed season 2 because I Googled it. Some guy on season 2 on the American one made an awesome kayak, like way better than mine. It looks like a shop bought one. So my kayak, I was constrained by the length of the tarpaulin. I only had 3 meters. So normally I'd probably make a 4.5 meter kayak if I had unlimited tarpaulin, but mine was short. Also, the constraints of not having straight saplings anywhere. So mine's a little wonky and a little bit bent, and that's just, I couldn't find any. They were the straightest bits of wood I could find to make it with. Now, I've made 2 sea kayaks before, and I was modeling the width of the kayak on my other kayaks, but in the end, I probably just underdid it just because I was aiming for something and it ended up a little bit thinner. So the thinness of it and the reduced length means that it's got very little volume. It's only just enough to keep me afloat. So there's only that much freeboard from the water coming over the side. So in hindsight, I should have made it a lot wider, but that's the best I could do at the time. And that's the thing, you learn lessons when you're out there, and next time I make a kayak in the bush like that, I'm going to make it wider. So it was still effective and hard to balance, but still I could do everything. It's not the kind of thing that I could load up with a lot of gear though, because I just didn't have the weight. The reason I had the gumboots in the back of my kayak was so if I found a river, I could fill it with water. It was a sunny day, there was less rain coming down. I just thought, hey, well, it'd be horrible to go and find a lovely flowing stream and not have any way of being able to capture the water. So I was able to finally troll down the outside, and I was just thinking, you know, there's a good chance I'm going to catch a fish doing this. The lures that I made, those are diving lures. It says in the text on the side of the screen that I carved a lure and I sliced a thin slice of red rubber off my gumboot to make a bib. And that lure had an action like this, just like a lure from a fishing shop, like a really good lure from a fishing shop too. I mean, the coloration was a little bland, it's wood color, but that's why I specifically bought those gumboots with a red sole, so I would have some red when I made fishing lures. So yeah, I mean, I tried everything bait-wise, every combination I could, grubs, worms, blah-de-blah. Now with lures, there's more variations to the lures as well, but I'm just carpet bombing every single method of which one is going to get fish, because often with fishing, you can try your ass off, but there's just one little thing and that's how you get the fish. That's why I was spreading everything all over the place. But I was thinking, yeah, once I get out and I troll along the deep edge, I'm going to start catching fish. No, not a sign whatsoever. I was whinging about having a sore stomach or sore stomach muscles just because I wasn't seated that well and didn't have anything to lean back on. So by propping that stuff up, I was able to lean back and be a bit more comfortable on there. But it certainly allowed me to do the recce of my area, which I would have done earlier on, but because of COVID, I didn't. But what I saw, you know, wasn't great. More of the same in general. Also on the kayak, the paddle, that took quite a lot of work as well. I had to cut down a tree and make a plank to carve out the paddle blades and then attach them and all that stuff. And I was looking I was looking everywhere for the right kind of shaft to the paddle. I didn't want a wet stick. It needed to be strong and dry. And I wanted it to be dry to be light, because it's heavy lifting a paddle. And if you're doing this the whole time and you've got a twice as heavy paddle, you're going to use a lot more energy. So I put a lot of effort into that paddle. So at the end there, I'm just kind of summarizing about my plan of high energy, or expending high energy to try and get food. But if that's not being successful, then you don't want to keep doing that. And this other end of the spectrum where you sit around and do nothing, because I'd done a lot of prep, I already had a trap out that was operating 24/7, although, you know, the animals are only out at night, but that's working for me. I've got the fishing lines out. So if I was to sit on my butt, I've still got a fair bit of stuff set up from the prep that I've done. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, you know, jumping in a sleeping bag and not moving. I'm just talking about choosing tasks that use less energy, because if there's not as much chance of return and it's a starvation game, that it's kind of like being in a prison cell. If you were placed in a prison cell with just 4 walls of concrete and you had to survive, you wouldn't want to be doing push-ups, would you? Okay, so this environment is a little bit more like a prison cell than a place where you can easily get food. That's what I was talking about. So that's episode 6, and looking forward to seeing you on episode 7. Thanks for watching.